Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. We don't talk a lot about lake trout because really in our area, we don't have as much lake trout fishing as some other areas do. Now, what I'm talking about, we know that Lake Ontario has a lot of lake trout. And we know that some of the lakes and ponds in the Adirondacks have lake trout. But we oftentimes, I think we put the lake trout way down on the fish ladder. We don't adore them like we do other species. We think, because I think we associate lake trout with the way they tend not to fight the way we catch them out in big water. And how is that? Well, in most cases, you're trolling with heavy equipment. You don't, the charter boats don't stop the boat when you hook a fish because all the other lines will foul up and they have to keep going. So you're really catching lake trout. You're dragging them from down deep. They don't get a chance to fight or anything. Well, this is what I wanted to tell you. I think lake trout are a phenomenal fish. I think they're an angry, tenacious, formidable foe because they are so tough like that. And I've caught lake trout by the hundreds up in the areas of Canada where I've been blessed to be able to go in my life because I did a TV show. And I would catch them in rivers. And I would catch them in other lakes where we were using light tackle. And these fish can be they can be incredible to catch. They'll fight and they'll swirl and they'll twist. And they're very, very aggressive. And I love lake trout, but that's the way I've always fished for them. Now, the other thing I do want to tell you is I remember years ago, and I've mentioned this on the radio through the years, but probably a lot of you have never heard me say this before. But I was up in Lake Athabasca in Alberta. And this lake is meant to be one of the greatest lake trout waters in the world because hardly anybody's ever had a chance to go there and catch them. It's a big body of water. The lake trout grow huge. And also, the northern pike grow huge. And where we were fishing up there, the two species were together in the same, basically shallow water. And we were catching northern pike over 20 pounds, and we were catching lake trout over 20 pounds. In fact, the biggest one we caught on that trip was 38 or 39 pounds. Now, here's what I wanted to tell you. Because they were together, I said to our guide, who I was really impressed with, he spent his life doing this, I said, so I'm amazed, don't the northern pike just annihilate these lake trout when we come into these shallow bays and areas? He looked at me and he chuckled. And I could see his eyes just sparkling with me saying that. In other words, what I asked him is who would win in a fight? A lake trout or a northern pike, knowing darn well it's going to be the northern. He said, no, a lake trout will destroy a northern pike every time. And what happens is they go on attack mode and they will go full speed and hit the northern pike right in the gut. They'll hit them with their head at full speed and they will start injuring that fish and they'll drive them right away. And I was amazed. I used to tell this story to kids in our fishing school with Cornell Extension, and they love stories like that. And again, it comes back to stories. And I've talked about how effective stories can be, whether you're teaching a child in school or whether you're talking with your grandparents or whatever. Stories are the sparkle of life. And I got to tell you, the stories of lake trout, some of the things that I have experienced. I remember catching when I was fishing Beauchene for smallmouth bass and never even thought of big lake trout. And we were fishing on a sandbar that was only 2 or 3 feet deep. And I had this strike and this vicious attack. And I thought was catching either the biggest pike or the biggest bass in the world. And I bring it in. It was a 17-pound lake trout. Now, I know how heavy because we had it mounted. And inside that lake trout was a 2 3/4 pound smallmouth that it had eaten. In fact, when I caught it, that smallmouth's tail was sticking out of its mouth. So, lake trout are a lot more than we might think. And as I tell you stories of lake trout as we go forward in the future, you know, and you might have a different opinion about this, what I think is a great fish. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.